Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host, Mitch. Glad to have you here. So I'm joined once again by Eddie. Say hi, Eddie.
Hi, Mitch. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing well.
Good. All right, so on a previous episode, Eddie and I talked about the 10 cards that we would ban in Commander if we were forced to ban cards. So today's episode is going to be similar, but slightly different. So Eddie, I don't know if you knew this, but we actually got some mail.
Did we? From who?
Yeah, from the Rules Committee, actually. They sent us a letter this time.
All right, that's nice of them. You know, they could send an email, but mail works.
They're kind of old school. So they sent it, and now it's in our script here, in our outline, and it says this. It says, Dear Mitch and Eddie, you have once again been chosen to become the Rules Committee, so apparently we screwed up last time. To accept this unpaid position, you must unban 5 cards for a total, unban 5 cards each for a total of 10 cards. Again, you must provide sound reasoning for your choices. So they must not have seen that we had sound reasoning last time.
And that I demanded to be paid.
And that you demanded to be paid.
Yeah.
So this time they're giving us a second chance, but now we're unbanning cards rather than banning them.
I can handle that. That seems good.
Okay, perfect. So before we get into that topic, though, one thing real quick. Just a couple of quick ways that you can help support the show. Some of the easiest ways are to like, share, and subscribe, and make sure you're hitting that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. Also, make sure that you're subscribing and reviewing for our podcast. It's on most podcast platforms now. You can also follow us on social media at EDH Quarters for Twitter and The Commander's Quarters for Instagram and Facebook. On social media, you're going to be seeing some sneak peeks on future episodes and things I'm working on. Also, when you buy decks or individual cards, make sure that you use our affiliate links. For Deck Tech, you're going to find that in the description with the deck list, or you can just use our general one with bit.ly/Commander's Quarters. Again, if you're already going to be buying those cards anyway, it's just a nice, easy way to help support the channel. You can also check out our playmats and merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Also, by the time this episode comes out, our Kickstarter is going to be in full swing. The Kickstarter features a custom art limited edition playmat that is only available for the campaign duration. So if you want a porcine stand playmat, make sure you go check that out before the 30 days is up. And the final way that you can support the show is by becoming a patron at patreon.com/commandersquarters. There are different patron tiers and rewards, so make sure you check that out. And again, I really couldn't thank all my patrons enough for all they've done for me. I really wouldn't be here doing all this today if it wasn't for their incredible support. But now let's move on to today's main topic. Let's unban 10 cards. So again, we need to unban 10 cards total, 5 cards each, and we need to give a solid reason for each and every single one. Do you think we can do that, Eddie?
I think we can handle that.
Okay, why don't you start us off with your first one then?
All right. So the first one, I think 99% of people are going to agree with this on.
Okay, and we don't want to hear from the 1%, so don't talk about it in the comments at all, please.
No, not that 1%. All right, so the first one we're just going to get right out of the way. It's Coalition Victory.
Yep.
Because really, Coalition Victory is banned. I mean, what's next? Happily Ever After?
That thing is broken.
Yeah,
Obviously,
super broken.
They say Oko is just, bonkers and standard. Look at Happily Ever After.
Yeah, it's coming through. All right, for Coalition Victory, for those that aren't familiar, is a sorcery. It costs 3 colorless and Wooburg, so 1 of each color. It says you win the game if you control a land of each basic land type and a creature of each color.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty high hurdle to jump over to win the game.
Not the easiest of things, I guess. 8 mana and then a decent amount of conditions too.
Right. So there's ways you can shortcut it for sure. You can have a 5-color creature.
Yep.
Tutoring is pretty easy these days for lands ramping. So
Sure.
it's not impossible to achieve, but you're pretty much earning it if you can cast Coalition Victory and meet all of its criteria. And there's quite a few different ways that people can respond to it.
Sure.
It can just be countered.
Yep.
Like everything. And anything that you're relying on to meet those conditions could be removed.
Sure.
To just make it fizzle. You're not going to win the game at that point.
Yeah, if someone beasts within one of your lands that you need, or if they beast within your commander set your 5 color, then it's gone.
Right. So then it's just, an 8-mana spell that didn't really do so much.
Okay.
So I think Wizards has kind of moved on from this because the one justification that I could see for it remaining on the ban list is that if you don't have a counter spell or interaction, which, there might be some things that you might need to take into your deck designs considerations if that's the case.
Yep.
But if you don't happen to have one of those from the people that are in the pod, it is sort of a just win the game on the spot.
Sure. I win. It is over. Nothing you can do about it.
Right. A lot of the new you win the game cards have also high bars to meet, but they're a little bit telegraphed as well. They might trigger on the upkeep, end step, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
So there's more chance for the rest of the table to interact with them.
Okay. Got you. That makes sense. I guess, I just did a recent episode on the best alternative win conditions in Commander, and I believe most of them did say upkeep.
Right.
Feldar Sovereign or whatever that one was. If you have 40 more life, you win on your upkeep.
Exactly.
So everyone's got to turn around the table to knock you down from that 40 at least. So
yeah, it becomes
or to get rid of the Feldar. Exactly. So you've got time.
Exactly. So Coalition Victory, we've talked about it. Let's move on to number 2.
Okay. So number 2 is Panoptic Mirror. So Panoptic Mirror is an artifact that costs 5 and it has imprint X. And by doing that, you pay X and you tap it, and you can remove an instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost of X from your hand from the game. And then that card is imprinted on the artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may copy the imprinted instant or sorcery card and play the card without paying its converted mana cost. So essentially, this just lets you cast something for free every single upkeep. So again, we kind of talked about like that upkeep, like that's kind of like the Wizards' way of getting around like, an instant win card. And yet this one is banned, and it's not, it doesn't win on its own. It needs an extra card to do that. So like if you have, say, Time Warp, which is just, a 3 blue sorcery, target player takes an extra turn for this one. So if you can get that on there for a total of 10 mana, right, pay the 5 to get into play, pay the 5 to tap it and imprint the Time Warp. Then on your next upkeep, you get a free extra turn. And then every single next upkeep, you get a free extra turn. So you still have to get to the next upkeep to actually get that value out of it and to actually kind of, lock out the game essentially and, and get those infinite extra turns. You could also, cast Armageddon with it. You could, or imprint Armageddon onto it. It's a sorcery for 3 and a white, destroy all lands. Not exactly the most fun thing.
No.
So, lands blowing up every single turn. Whoever's got mana rocks wins. But again, like you said, it's an upkeep thing. So you have time to respond to it. You've got time to take that player out. You've got time to take out the Panoptic Weir. You've got time to take action and make sure that that doesn't happen necessarily. Sure. Now, Coalition Victory is kind of, a one-shot thing. If you cast it, someone can deal with one of your things when you cast it, and then you don't get it, it's done. Panoptic Mirror, yeah, if, let's say that you counter, the first, copied spell off of it, you can stop it once, but you need something extra to remove the mirror to actually stop that player. Sure.
Yeah. So I would be curious on your thoughts for if that creates a good player experience or if it's worth unbanning to introduce that potential play experience to just take all the turns into a play group. Because I think the rules committees, one of their goals is to create good player experiences.
Yeah, sure.
And we've also talked about in our last episode about how it's really good to just communicate. If you're in a meta where you're taking all these extra turns, great. Do you think that there's any justification for Panoptic Mirror for creating a bad player experience, even though there's a sufficiently high bar to meet?
I mean, I definitely think that it could with certain groups or with certain, at certain local game stores. And we'll get to this later, I think, in like our subtopic where we kind of talk about, that, what is kind of the rules committee's, job when it comes to making sure that player experience is good and what defines a good player experience.
Yeah, I think it can vary for a lot of people.
I think that there's a lot of other ways you can take infinite turns, and there's plenty of ways that don't involve the mirror that are completely legal in Commander. Sage of Hours, you can do it pretty easily with a lot of different ways. Like in the Missouri deck, you can easily get infinite turns with Sage of Hours. If I can put those two right. Hopefully, I'll put them on the screen. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that is a good justification. There's plenty of other ways to do it. So that kind of becomes another whole other topic for ban lists, but it becomes an issue of consistency.
Yeah.
So if you're going to ban Panoptic Mirror, why not ban these other ways
exactly?
To take
and I think
turns?
It's something that was banned, kind of not originally. I don't know when exactly it was banned. Probably should have looked that up. But it was banned and kind of to a point where maybe it was really powerful back then. But I think with all the things that we have now, people playing a lot more interaction, a lot of different ways to kind of get rid of this and to stop it from happening. There's a heavy investment for that to actually work.
Yes.
And it's not that easy. I mean, it's not, if you have the card in your hand and you've got that in play, it's going to take a lot of mana, a lot of resources, for you to pull that off.
Exactly. And I think your point about how when the ban list was originally created, the metas shifted a little bit, segues nicely into my next pick.
Oh, so now we're just moving on.
We are.
Perfect.
Biorhythm is going to be number 3. Biorhythm is another... I must have a theme here. It's another 8-mana sorcery.
All yours 8-mana sorceries?
No, I promise. Biorhythm is 6 green for a sorcery that says each player's life total becomes the number of creatures they control.
Yep.
This is a deceptively powerful card.
Yeah.
Because at first that sounds like, so what? That's not really a big deal.
Yeah.
However, you notice if you have 0 creatures, your life total becomes 0.
If you're playing a Spellslinger deck, you might not.
Yeah, Storm decks might not love it so much unless they have a young Pyromancer or something out. But so it's another one of those, you can win the game out of nowhere or at least get a lot towards it.
Yep.
And the reason this is a good segue from the last one is because there's another card that's been printed recently
Yeah.
that has Biorhythm on it.
Yeah.
That is legal. And that is Shaman of the Forgotten Ways, which is, I believe, 2 and a green.
I think you're right. Yeah.
For a human shaman.
Yep.
2/3. You can add 2 mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool. Spend this only to cast creature spells.
Mm-hmm.
And then it has a second ability, Formidable, for 9 colorless green, and tapping Shaman of Forgotten Ways. It has basically the exact Biorhythm text.
Sure.
With the requirement that you have to have 8 power on board.
Gotcha. Which, if you're doing that kind of a deck, you're probably going to be having 8 power.
Yeah, and so I think these days we don't really see Shaman of Forgotten Ways played that much. It's not a very common card, which is indicative that decks have just gotten lower to the ground. They're faster, they're more resilient, more interaction, and a card like Biorhythm and Shaman of the Forgotten Ways, even if it were legal, like Shaman isn't really going to see that much play. I know if it were played against me, chances are you would either have a creature or they would have to have it as part of their plan to clear the board.
Yep.
But I wouldn't be too upset, like, if Biorhythm was played against me.
No, I wouldn't either.
Yeah, so it's just one of those, like, good job, you did the thing.
Yep.
Let's shuffle up, play the next game. It doesn't really seem like a feel bad anymore because decks have gotten sufficiently resilient to be able to handle a card like Biorhythm.
I feel like that as well. And I think there are, like, there's not too many similar cards that really mess with life totals too much. In my Selenia deck, which I love the Selenia deck, you need a very specific deck to kind of use the way that I do it, the way that Repay in Kind, Repay in Kind is a sorcery that costs 5 black, I believe, 7-mana total, and it says everyone's life total essentially becomes the lowest among all players.
Right.
So it kind of has that similar effect with Biorhythm where you can kind of it doesn't matter what your life total is, if I can set my life total down to 1, I can set everyone's life total down to 1 out of nowhere. And that card's not banned, but it's harder. There's a lot more hoops to jump through, yes. But it's not like an unheard of thing that, playing with life totals is just, it's not like, Armageddon in Commander where people are just like, oh no, destroying lands, don't do that. You're allowed to play with life totals.
It doesn't really seem like a breach of the social contract.
No, I mean, and you've got, what's the Tree of Perdition, you've got that as well. Okay, your life total becomes 13, or if I've got a way to reduce my toughness on my Tree of Perdition, I can get it down to 1. Like, you've got plenty of ways to do that, and Biorhythm's just another way to do it. Is it hard to get to 8 mana in green? No.
Right. Yeah.
But come on.
Yeah. So another thing that Biorhythm makes me think about is one of the biggest complaints about the rules committee is that issue of consistency. Like, if this card is banned Biorhythm, why isn't Shaman of Forgotten Ways banned? And I think they actually have a pretty relevant quote on the homepage, which we can hopefully add a link to in the description. Is that all right, Mitch?
Yeah, I think I can do that.
Great. Sounds
Maybe.
good. Sounds good.
We'll see.
So they have a quote on their website that says, "We encourage groups to use the rules and the ban list as a baseline to optimize their own experience."
Yep.
And that's in the context that they're saying it. They're trying to say that the ban list, while it is a exact list of cards that are illegal in sanctioned Commander games, it's also meant to signal that these effects maybe aren't the most fun to see at casual tables where you're just playing with a group of friends. So if you see any other cards that have similar effects to the cards on this ban list, maybe at least consider including something different in your deck. So they're kind of signposts, which I think, that kind of, to me at least, it doesn't solve, but it at least makes me understand that while not everything is incredibly consistent, and I think you and me certainly could improve the ban list.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. It does make the issue of inconsistency a little less poignant. Like, it's not quite as big of a deal.
I don't think that's the point of it. Yeah, it's guidelines, for people who, if you're just starting off in Commander and you maybe don't know kind of what the meta and kind of the expectations of a Commander game are, it's something that can kind of help.
Yeah, I think so. What's our number 4 pick, Mitch?
Okay, so the next pick, let me get my sheet real quick, is Sundering Titan. Okay, so Sundering Titan, if I have my phone up the right way. Sundering Titan is in Golem, an artifact creature Golem. That it's a 7/10 that costs 8 mana. When it enters the battlefield or leaves the battlefield, you choose a land of each basic land type, then destroy those lands. So, land destruction.
Yep.
It is land destruction. Yes,
it
it's
is
land destruction on a body, and it blows things up when it comes in and when it leaves.
Yes, and it's not a May ability, so I will note that if the person casting Sundering Titan is the sole owner of an island, you're blowing up your own land.
Goodbye island. Exactly. Yes. So, yes, there are definitely potential downsides to it, even for the caster. But you can generally pick and choose among, every player. If everyone else has one of each basic land, goodbye to 5 lands that aren't yours.
Right.
And then 10 if you can blink it or when it gets destroyed or whatnot.
Sure. So why should this be unbanned?
So in my opinion, 8 mana is a decent enough amount that, it is a high enough cost. And if I have a hard time saying that, okay, if Armageddon is unbanned, which blows up every land,
right,
that something that only blows up at most at a time, 5 lands, should be banned.
Sure. So does the fact that it's colorless can be put in any deck, unlike Armageddon, or the fact that it can be blinked, is that any mitigating factor, or is the 8 enough?
I don't think you can say that it can be put in any deck since it costs 8 mana. I think that
That's
there are
true.
plenty, like a Spellslinger deck is not going to want to just throw that in randomly. It has to be.
No. Although that would catch people out of nowhere.
Now I cast my cantrip and then Sundering Titan.
Exactly.
Exactly. But no, it doesn't go into every single deck. I think there are definitely decks that could abuse it. Obviously, with blinking decks like a Brago deck, like you can definitely abuse that and destroy lands. And that, to me, I think destroying lands gets a bit too.
It gets a bad rap.
It gets a bad rap. Okay,
and
it does get a bad rap.
With the predominance of green and land-based ramp, it's one reason why Wayfarer's Bubble is so popular. Artifacts are pretty easy to destroy. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's definitely an effect that exists. And
no
lands,
one's going to be upset when a Vandal Blast happens. I mean, they're not going to be up in arms, but if someone casts an Armageddon, then everyone just loses their minds.
Yeah. So
I think that that it is abusable. It has a heavy investment, but it's not for every deck. It's not going to go into every single deck. It's not going to just destroy metas because Sundering Titan is now a thing.
I think I'm on board. I think that all the other effects are so much more egregious and accessible that Sundering Titan doesn't really need to be banned anymore. So
I think so.
Let's get it off the list.
Let's get off the list. Okay, next up.
We've got Ruffalo, Llanowar Emissary. He's a legendary creature, elf druid. He's a 2/1, costs green, and he has a very simple ability. Just says add 1 green mana for each forest you control.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we touched on this in our previous episode of 10 newly banned cards, and how there's a little bit of nuance to this, but I want to note that Ruffalo is on the reserved list. The reserved list is a list of cards that Wizards of the Coast has basically promised that they will not reprint.
Yep.
And as such, the supply of these cards is only ever going to decrease. So
when people lose them or
might get lost, might get damaged.
Your dog's going to eat it.
And so the price really is only ever going to go up on these cards.
Yep.
And it gets tricky when you try to bring price into the ban list, whether unbanning or banning conversation at all. Because I think I looked this up before we started. Ruffalo is going $20-ish plus or minus.
Okay.
If you unban Ruffalo, what do you think would happen?
150 at least, I think.
At least. Because Ruffalo has an ability that's quite similar to some other very powerful commanders.
Yep.
The first 2 that came to my mind were Selvala, Heart of the Wild.
Yep.
Selvala, I believe, is 1 green. So 3 CMC as opposed to 2.
Yep.
For a 2/3. And whenever another creature enters the battlefield, its controller may draw a card if its power is greater than each other creature's power. But the real reason people play Selvala is the second ability, which is 1 green and tap Selvala, and then you add X mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control.
Gotcha.
So Selvala, while not the top tier CDH deck, it can hang in with those decks because
pretty disgusting.
It can. Just think about Galta, and that's not even the ideal creature to put out there. But if you get Galta, green, tap for 12 mana, there's Umbral Mantle. There's tons of ways to
generate infinite mana.
Or at least large enough that it doesn't matter so much anymore. So Selvala occupies a similar territory to what I think Ruffalo would occupy.
But Selvala is legal in Commander?
Selvala is legal.
Okay.
It's a newer card. I think it came out in Conspiracy. Another one that's right up there with those 2 is Yisan the Wanderer Bard.
Yep.
Another 3 CMC mono green commander. Yisan is basically a tutor. Again, utilizes untapped shenanigans to go up the chain of CMC creatures to quickly take over the game.
Yep.
So I think Ruffalo, while he is on the reserve list and there could be complications from him becoming unbanned, such as becoming, $1,000, he doesn't occupy a different enough space to justify being banned when these other 2 cards are not, for example.
Yeah, I guess if being played, let's say, fairly or whatnot, turn 2, you get him out. And then turn 3, you play another land and you tap. You've got six mana on turn 3.
Yeah, which is pretty darn good.
It's good. It's not unheard of. Like, it's not brokenly good, though. It's not bannably good.
Right, and you're limiting yourself to mono green, which, while green's an excellent color, it is a limitation.
It's not mono blue. No.
It isn't. It isn't.
No.
I think the last criteria for him to be unbanned is the fact that he would 100% go in my restack.
Yes, we definitely unbanned just for that reason.
Exactly. So as an unpaid member of the rules committee, once I receive a salary, then I will. We can reban.
Perfect. That makes sense.
All right. Moving right along. Number 6.
Let's move on to the next one. All right. I think there's gonna be some people who are very happy, a small minority maybe, and then some people are gonna be very unhappy about this one. But let's unban Braids Cabal Minion. Braids is a 2/2 human minion that costs 2 black, and she has, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices an artifact, creature, or land. So Braids is typically, or would typically be, a stacks commander.
Right. What does stacks mean?
Stacks, I'm not sure exactly. I think they stand, each letter stands for something different. But it's also named after smokestacks, I believe. But I think anyway.
I think I've heard smokestack as the kind of
regardless on the history of stacks.
Let's hear a history of the word stacks down below in the comments.
Exactly. So basically, a stacks deck wants to kind of halt everyone's kind of progress forward, and then break that symmetry by having a way to get around that effect, or to have that effect not affect you as much. So essentially, everyone else is stalled and you are not.
Right.
There's
a lot of ways you can build around having your own thing sacrificed. There's a ton of artifacts that just love being sacrificed. You get more value from them being sacrificed.
Absolutely.
So if Braids is so good and you can break parity so easily, why should she be unbanned?
So my thing, and this is actually probably something we're going to debate later, but I think that the reason Braids is banned, and probably is just because as a commander, it's unfun for some people to play against. I don't think that in the 99 it's not broken. Like, in the 99 is completely fine. There are other cards that do what Braids does better. Like, I mean, I mentioned Smokestacks. Like, Smokestack is an artifact that costs 4. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a suit counter on Smokestack. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a permanent for each suit counter on Smokestack.
They need to add soot counters to more things.
They do. More suit counters everywhere. Get things all sooty.
Yeah.
I don't think it's anyway. But yeah, basically, like, that is a bigger Braids effect. That can go in any deck. Like, and it's not banned. Plenty of other stacks cards that aren't banned, and Braids is simply because of that, she's going to be played as a commander then. Which, that's the debate then, and we'll get into this kind of later, but basically, I think that at a base level, if you are going up against other players, even at an LGS, and everyone pulls out their commander, and say like, okay, I'm playing my commander, I got mine, and the last person's like, okay, I'm going to play Braids, and you're like, let's hold up here real quick. Before we go into that, set expectations. If the rest of the group, you and the rest of the group aren't okay with playing against Braids, bring that up. I think if you're going into an LGS and you're a stacks player, you probably know that a lot of people out there don't necessarily want to play against stacks. And I've always kind of said, you are allowed to play whatever deck you want, but you need to set the expectations ahead of time with people.
Yeah, I think that's only fair.
I think that's 100% expectation thing. Like, you're not tricking anyone, by having a Braids deck. You're being very honest. Like, this, there's only so many ways you can build Braids. It's probably going to be a stacks deck. Like, you're not trying to trick people and be like, oh, no, don't worry about the Braids. Like, no, don't do it that way. But you're setting the expectation. Everyone knows what's going to be happening. So if everyone's okay with playing with Braids ahead of time, then go for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think as we talked about at the end of the last episode, it's all about communication. That's what it always comes down to. If you are playing in CEDH metas, Braids isn't going to really be able to hang out with another stacks commander like Derevi.
Derevi, correct me if I'm wrong, CEDH players, but I believe Derevi is a lot better than Braids would be.
Well, you get blue, so.
Yes. Well, and Derevi creates that non-symmetrical effect for you.
Exactly. It's in the command zone. And I agree. And even if that conversation isn't had, just seeing Braids' crazy eyes in the command zone, you are going to be able to maybe plan for it. Put an extra little cheap artifact or like ramp a little bit. Try to get more permanence into play.
If one of your
So once Braids does appear, you're ready for it.
if they get her out on turn 2, you're probably in trouble.
That's accurate. Yeah.
But
yeah.
yes, I think again this is a debate that we'll probably have either later in the show or another day. But yeah, Abandoned Commander used to be a thing, for those of you who didn't know, where you could still have it in your 99, but then at a certain point it became confusing, which I don't disagree with. That is kind of confusing. Oh, this is banned here but not there.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying that basically there are certain commanders that people should be able to play whatever commander they want, I feel like, personally. But if you're going up against a group of people and someone's not okay with playing against that, then make a different decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these cards are banned for the feel bads.
Sure.
It really can tilt some people to have their lands messed with. It's why the social contract, such as it is right now, leans so heavily away from land destruction. Even counter spells in a lot of metas. I know when I first started, nothing could really make me as upset as having my giant payoff spell countered.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, I've grown as a player. What do you expect? Do you want everyone to get Torment of Hailfired for 30? They're not just going to let that happen.
Yep.
More than once.
I want to do my Big Timmy thing. Come on, let me do my Big Timmy thing.
Yeah, and I think there is something to be said for big battlecruiser magic. If everyone wants to play big battlecruiser magic, no counter spells, no land destruction, awesome.
Yeah.
Just have that conversation first.
Exactly.
That's all that we're saying.
Talk. Converse.
Yep. Except for that 1% we don't want to talk to.
Yeah, we don't want to talk to them, the ones that want coalition victory bans.
Yes.
Those people you cannot communicate with. Okay, all right, Eddie, what is your next one?
My next card is Prophet of Krufix. It's one of the more recent bans, actually, in the scheme of things. Prophet of Krufix is a creature, human wizard, for 3 green and a blue. Its text says, untap all creatures and lands you control during each other player's untap step. You may cast creature spells as though they had flash, and it's a 2/3. So the first thing I see when I see Prophet of Krufix is a very close relation Seedborn Muse.
Yep.
Which I know we've had this conversation. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but they're very similar cards, and one of them is not banned.
Yep.
Seedborn untaps all permanents and isn't as color restrictive as Prophet, so that actually goes in Seedborn's favor. Whereas Prophet Krufix allows creatures to be played with flash, so that's kind of a balancing factor.
Gotcha.
I think it is, if I had to place my conjecture out there, it's probably banned for the same reason that I suggested Cyclonic Rift could be banned. It's not, guys, don't worry. But it's the fact that if you're playing in blue-green, there's really no good reason you wouldn't be running Prophet Krufix.
That's true.
It treads that auto-include territory.
Yep, could be very true.
I mean, it's not in every blue-green deck, but the vast majority are pretty creature-heavy and playing them at flash speed, which it by itself enables by untapping your lands and other creatures on every untap step.
So it's the engine and the enabler, which is Seedborn Muse is just the engine, and you need something like a Vidalcan Ori.
You need to capitalize on it a little bit more. And another reason I think Prophet of Krufix could be unbanned is that it's a great card if, again, we're kind of in those battle cruiser metas. One player, probably me in my Rashmi deck, is going to be taking a turn on every other person's turn, which is just not the most fun for the other people at the table to watch you take turns. It's, almost like taking infinite turns, but a little bit more politely.
Sure.
And so it's just one of those things where it kind of creates this time sink where you're watching one person trying to make their deck win. And,
it's like playing an 8-player game of EDH.
That's a good
point. But that player
gets
3 of the or 4 of the turns.
Yeah. And while that's a great effect, you don't really see Seedborn Muse showing up in competitive EDH lists.
Nope.
And I don't really think you'd see Prophet end up there either. 5 is just a lot of mana. And granted, you can get there on turns 2 or 3, it's definitely possible. But it's not such a competitive card, and it doesn't generate as many feel bads as some of the other cards that I think we've proposed banning or are currently banned. So
I agree 100%.
Yeah. Plus 1/3 of my actual decks are Simic colored, so
that's the real reason again.
Yeah.
All right. If you're not getting paid for it, then you're definitely getting some benefits out of it. All right, let's move on to the next one. So this is going to be another commander that is banned. Arayo Soratami Ascendant. This is a flip commander, so this is going to be fun. Here we go. So it is a 1/1 Moonfolk Monk. Moonfolk Monk with flying. Whenever the force spell of a turn is played, flip Arayo Soratami Ascendant. So we flip. Then it becomes Arayo's Essence, which is a legendary enchantment, and it says counter the first spell played by each opponent each turn. So essentially, this is another way that if you get it down turn 2, and you can either immediately cast 4 or 3 more things, right? Then it's flipping, and then your opponents are getting 1 thing countered each turn, so it's going to take them 2 things to cast in order to get through it.
Right, yeah.
So as a commander, I can see how that would not be fun to play against. And again, kind of with my same argument as the Braids argument, if you're going to be playing against someone who wants to play that, then you can be like, hey, we're not okay with that. Please pick another commander if you can.
Right.
But as something in the 99, it doesn't fit into... It's a really good card in certain decks, but it's not brokenly good, and it's not brokenly good enough to go in every deck. Like, you can't just throw that in every single deck that has blue, because you're not going to be able to always fit that requirement of casting 4 spells in a turn.
Right. And I actually just saw today, as of the day of recording, Commander Versus just had
now you timestamp my episodes, now people know how long it takes me to do these.
Sorry. Commander Versus, it's a very good Commander gameplay with a good group of guys. They had a fun little thought experiment that was very timely for our discussion on playing decks where each of the commanders is banned.
Okay.
The 99 were all still
within the ban list
requirements. One of those cards that was being played as a commander was Arayo.
Was Braids as well?
Braids was played.
There you go. Unban both of them.
Unban both of them. It was a really good game. It didn't really turn into the degenerate things that you think a game that's playing with all banned commanders could do. And Arayo definitely drew a significant amount of hate. I don't want to put any spoilers out there for anyone that is going to go watch the episode. But while it is a good effect, did not run rampant, did not create an unplayable environment.
Well, and it doesn't shut you completely out. Like, it just counters your first spell. So, yes, it's going to feel bad. Like, let's say that you have a Beast Within or something like that. You've got to cast another spell ahead of time that's going to get countered, but then you can cast the Beast Within second and then destroy the Arayo's Essence. Like, you can still get around it. It's not just Arayo flipped, it's locked now, we can't do anything. Like, there are ways to get around it. You can work with your opponents to do things too, to like, okay, like this time I'll sacrifice, my 2 spells to get rid of this if you guys give me another turn off or whatnot. And that Arayo player is probably, like you said, is going to get hated out at some point. Like, people countering your spells constantly, like, you're going to destroy them at a certain point.
Yeah.
So it's not something that I think is brokenly good that it needs to be banned.
That's fair. I mean, I don't really have a strong counter argument to that. I think Arayo
argument?
Oh, ow. I didn't even realize I did that. The dad jokes are real.
That's
I can't even help it anymore.
One quick comparable card that isn't banned and that is a commander is Gaddock Teague. Gaddock Teague can shut down decks. Like, it can shut down certain decks, and that one isn't like your first spell is countered and the rest aren't. No, that one says, it's a 2/2 Kithkin Advisor that costs green-white. And it says non-creature spells with converted mana cost 4 or greater can't be cast. Non-creature spells with X in their mana cost can't be cast. That shuts down like my entire Golos deck. Like, Joda is. I mean, it only shuts down a smaller percentage of decks, obviously, but like, there's no way to get around that at a certain point, and it just locks you out. But that one's not banned.
Oh yeah, I think let's just make a 1-for-1. Gaddock can go.
Gaddock can go away. We're not going to recommend bans in this episode. But just for last one, you had your chance.
I did have my chance, and Gaddock did not make the list.
Let's move on.
All right, so this one, I'll be honest, is a little bit sillier, but I just think
it'd be fun.
It'd be fun. Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn.
All right.
Emrakul is a legendary creature - Eldrazi for the low price of 15 mana.
15.
For that 15 mana, you do get a wide variety of things.
Okay.
First of all, it can't be countered, so don't even try it.
Okay.
When you cast Emrakul, you just get an extra turn. Take an extra turn.
If you're paying 15 mana, I mean,
it's only
fair, right?
Yeah, so pseudo haste. If you have another haste enabler like Lightning Greaves, you can, give it haste and then also attack again the next turn to get some extra value. Emrakul's also flying, because why not? Protection from colored spells.
Okay.
So anything that's not colorless.
Very few responses.
Annihilator 6, which is a bit of an aged mechanic, but Annihilator means whenever this creature attacks, the defending player has to sacrifice a number of permanents equal to its annihilator value. So 6 permanents.
I believe that's the most out of
on
any of the
attack.
Eldrazi. Is that correct? Like,
Yeah,
Annihilator 6 is the
Emercool's
most.
like the queen of the Eldrazi.
Yeah.
She's mean.
Mhm.
That's not all though. If Emrakul would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, it gets shuffled back into their library. If it's your commander, that's not as relevant.
Yep.
So Emrakul's not allowed as commander or the 99 right now. I think Emrakul should be unbanned because
This would be fun.
we're playing Elder Dragon Highlander, the most splashy of splashy formats where
That is true.
you're getting the most ridiculous plays just for the lulz. And Emrakul's like the biggest, baddest creature, and we can't play her.
That's true.
So I think it would be just a blast. Like, granted, all of these lines of text just scream that it should be banned.
It's the most powerful thing ever, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have protection from everything. It's not Progenitus level.
The ironic thing I just realized, actually, Imprison in the Moon does not imprison this Emrakul, right?
That's actually true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You cannot imprison this Emrakul in the Moon. The other one you can, but not this one.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So I think 15 mana. Granted, there's a million ways you can ramp.
Yeah, you can cheat out with like sneak attack or whatnot.
Well, so notably, it's a cast trigger.
Oh, it is a cast trigger. Okay,
Yep,
never mind.
yep.
So yeah,
So
ignore
it
that.
cannot be
We're gonna
abused
rewind. I
with-
did not say that.
And this won't work if Emrakul's at the helm. But for example, if it was in the 99 and you had Teamer Sabertooth, return
Sure.
target creature to your hand back, and then you can just keep recasting it if you have 19 mana, 2 green.
Everyone's got that much.
Yeah, just
a
laying
lot of
around.
mana. To work
I mean,
with.
it's pretty easy to make infinite mana. So there's
Sure.
a lot of reasons that Emrakul should remain banned, frankly. But if we're playing the format where the most insane things could happen, why not Emrakul?
No, why not Emeril? That's the campaign for 2020 for Emeril. Why not
Why not
Emeril? All
Yes.
right, perfect.
Okay, so last
last one. This one might sound familiar because you've heard it before. Recently, actually, this one was one of the 2 more recent ban cards. The one that Eddie was not playing in one of his decks, I
Yes.
believe.
Rest in peace, Paradox.
And that would leave Iona, Shield of Maria to be the other one. So this is the one that I'm saying should be unbanned after the Rules Committee just banned it. So hear me out. It is a 7/7 angel that costs 6 white, white, white. It has flying. It says, when it enters the battlefield, choose a color. Your opponents can't cast spells of the chosen color. So the Rules Committee gave plenty of reasons why this shouldn't be banned, and I think the main reason was basically a case of the feel bads. Like, essentially, like,
Sure.
you cast it, you're playing against a mono green player, and now that mono green player cannot play.
Right. Yeah. And the green players, they're just out of luck these days.
Green does not have anything going for them.
No.
So, a couple things. There are plenty of ways to get around this card. You can make deals with your opponents. Like, let's say you're the mono green player. You can make deals with your opponents. If you might have something on the board that can actually deal with it, you might have enough creatures on the board that you can just threaten that player, or threaten other players to basically take action to get rid of that. There are ways to interact with it. Yes, there are times we can just lock you or half of another player out, or maybe multiple players out.
Mm-hmm.
It costs 9 mana.
It does.
It costs a lot, and it's a white card, and white is the weakest color out of all of Commander. And also, I mean, it's also a legendary creature, so you could use it as your commander, but no one ever did. I think it was in 26 decks before it was banned or whatnot as a commander or whatnot on EDH Rec. Like, it's not banned because it's a commander. It's banned because in the 99, eventually you'll get it out, and it will just cause problems for probably one player at the table. And because it's more of like a targeted one where you're saying, like, you don't get to do stuff. That's, I think, the reason that the Rules Committee banned it, because you're targeting one player versus kind of all players getting affected. And I think you're looking up the one that I already have. Maybe not.
No.
Okay. But the one that I'm going to bring up that actually I think is more detrimental, I'm not saying it should be banned. I don't want it to be banned. But, like, I have seen cause a lot more problems when it comes out than Iona is Void Winnower, which says it's an 11/9 Eldrazi that costs 9. So it can go in any deck, unlike Iona. And it says your opponents can't cast spells with even converted mana cost. Your opponents can't block creatures with even converted mana cost. So it stops you from casting all even converted mana cost spells. I've been in situations before where this comes down and all 3 of that player's opponents only have even spells in their hand and can't cast anything. So
Right.
it locks all players out of the game out of all colors. There are going to be times, obviously, where it hits more things where it doesn't. But I'm not saying that Void Winnower should be banned because Iona's banned. I'm saying that, like, there are ways around Iona. It costs a lot. yes, there might be a feel bad when it happens and comes down, but there are still ways to deal with it. It is not a broken card by any means. And I think this is kind of, again, that, I'm not going to say flimsy is not the word, but it's a loose definition of what should be banned.
Sure.
And I think that kind of, this skirts the line of, like, it's not too powerful to be banned. It's just like, I don't feel good when this comes down.
Do you think that Iona died for Painter's Servant's sins?
I don't think it did, but go ahead and read Painter's Servant first.
Yeah, Painter's Servant was also in that most recent set of bans and unbans. Painter's Servant was banned and is now unbanned.
Sure.
Painter's Servant is an artifact creature scarecrow, 1/3 for 2 mana. When it comes into play, choose a color. All cards that aren't in play, spells, and permanents are the chosen color in addition to their other colors. So Painter's Servant, you could say, I name green.
Yep.
Everything is now a green spell, green permanent, all of it. And then you can cast Iona and name green. So now no one can cast anything except for you, because Iona just specifically says opponents.
Yeah.
So do you think that having Iona banned was worth getting Painter's Servant unbanned, or do you think free them both? Let's have them both out there.
I mean, I say free them both. I'm always for more cards, play with your cards. Yep. But like, I think that they're both creatures, so you can deal with them.
Yep.
I mean, if you tooth and nail them both out, good for you. Like,
right.
I mean, that happens, but there are plenty of combos out there that, and I actually know that even might be a more, a better way to lose is, okay, I've locked everyone out of the game. Good game over. Versus, right. Okay, like, okay, Timmy over there can't play.
Yeah.
But everyone else can play. And so it just takes a longer game drawn out versus, okay, this game's over. I got my 2-card combo out, essentially.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't think that, you should say, okay, like, because I'm banning or want to unban Painter's Servant, I have to ban this other card that would be bad with Painter's Servant. Iona isn't to that kind of level of power, I believe, that it would see even if Painter's Servant is unbanned right now, which it is, I don't think Iona would see, a 10% boost in her amount of play. I don't think I'd see a ton of Painter's Servant Iona decks out there just running around.
Right. Although if we unban them both, we can find out.
Exactly. Do it. So that's that. Okay, now that we've gone through the 10 cards that we would unban, Braids especially, just kidding, let's talk about our subtopic for today, which is going to be abolishing the ban list. So we kind of brought up a little bit earlier about how if playgroups can make like their own decisions, then why is there a banner unban list or banner unban list? Why is there a ban list at all? Like, right. What's kind of the purpose of that? So do you think the whole ban list should be abolished, Eddie?
I think my stance is pretty consistent with what we talked about at the end of the last episode, and that is that while in a perfect world the ban list should not need to exist, in this world that we live in, it's maybe not such a bad idea to have one.
Yep.
I think the rules committee gets vilified very often for
stop doing that, people.
Be nice. You can have positive feedback, positive critique. There's a way to do that.
Constructive criticism.
Constructive criticism is the phrase for it.
Positive feedback.
Positive feedback. And so while they may not be perfect, I don't think there ever is such a thing as a perfect ban list. Even a no ban list is not necessarily perfect because it varies, which, beating another dead horse, talk to people. While no ban list would be great, and if a perfect world existed where everyone had those conversations to have the power level and the gameplay set appropriately before you shuffled up and played, then I agree a ban list would not be required.
Yeah.
I don't think that exists in my experience, though, and my experience is, pretty limited, just like everyone's, but there's a lot of people out there that are playing for the first time, and I think I would prefer to live in a world where, unfortunately, Emeril probably should be banned.
It'd be so much fun.
It would be so much fun, wouldn't it? But to allow people to have and expect a pretty reasonable play experience, a few cards that are especially guilty of breaking the social contract, such as we have it, probably ought to be banned just to on the whole have a more positive
maintain order.
Yes, maintain order.
Chaos.
More healthy metagame, as it were.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No. I was gonna say I definitely respect that perspective, and I think it's a really good perspective, and a good kind of I think pragmatic kind of realistic way to approach it. And I think that I have maybe too optimistic of a perspective where I like to think like the rules committee has an impossible job. They're never going to make anyone happy, or anyone happy, everyone happy. They make plenty of people happy. They're never going to make everyone happy. Like that's just realistic. In my perspective, I like to see as many things unbanned as possible because people should be able to play with their cards.
Right.
I like to see, and I think we brought up this. It's hard with the consistency. You know, it's kind of. I like to see it be a little more consistent because, I mean, for example, okay, they like to pick and choose. It seems like they like to pick and choose their reasoning as to why things ban. Some things apply in certain situations, but not in others. And so, like, Sol Ring is unbanned. Is it a very powerful card? Yes. Is it unbanned because it's $4 a piece and everyone has access to it? Essentially, that's probably why it's unbanned. If it was a $500 card, it might be banned. Like the Mox are. I'm not going to say that I'm not a CH player, so I don't know how good the Mox would be compared to a Sol Ring, but I think that 2 mana is better than 1 generally. So, like, the Mox are banned right now, yet they might be slightly less powerful than a Sol Ring. They do give you mana of a color. Anyway, essentially, the reason that they're banned essentially is probably because of money, because they cost a lot of money, and because then players might feel obligated to have them in their decks like Sol Ring. But I think that's a slippery slope again on saying like, okay, this should be banned because of a monetary reason, and this one shouldn't be banned because of the same kind of reason. Like not Library of Alexandria, Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale is not banned right now, yet it is $1,800. So it is not an accessible card for many people, and yet it's a very powerful card, but it's not banned. And if you're saying that money needs to be into the equation, I think that gets really hairy.
It does muddy the waters. And same thing. I mean, it's a pendulum, right? Because there's so many times that we've said throughout this episode, this should be unbanned because this equivalent card is not banned. So then you can take it the other direction as well. Well, maybe they should be banned and get rid of like all 2-card combos, which really just leads to a whole bunch of people on the internet trying to find a way around it.
All 2-card combos. There'd be a lot of cards
well,
going.
Exactly. So it is a slippery slope. I mean, I don't think slippery slope is the right term for that, but there are criteria where if you're going to get rid of 2-card combos, oh boy, the ban list is going to blossom up to 500 cards.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think the only other thing that I wanted to chime in here before we come to a close today is while it's not perfect, and there's arguments for having no ban list, another thing is that it's pretty good. Commander's been healthy for a good number of years.
The best spot not the best spot it's been in, but like it's the biggest format in Magic. It's it's the most popular format. People love it. Like obviously the rules committee is doing something right.
And it's one of the only formats, not the only, but one of the main played formats where Wizards of the Coast isn't in charge of the ban list.
Coincidence?
And so the rules committee has been doing a good job of keeping a healthy metagame. They haven't been making too many changes to the banned list, in my opinion. And think of the alternatives. Like if Wizards of the Coast did gain control of Commander somehow, we're not going to conjecture how that might happen, but every single
deals.
yes. Every single ban or unban done by Wizards of the Coast would be scrutinized to no end. Because maybe there's a secondary market implication. Maybe they would expand the ban list. Maybe
they ban something and then print something right away that's kind of like a functional-ish reprint of it.
Right. There's just such a rabbit hole that would open. So I think playing the game in your mind, like of what the alternatives to the existing setup would be, makes me appreciate what we have right now a little bit more.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rules Committee members and the Commander Advisory Group for all of their hard work.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right.
Now that this unban discussion is ended and we both have presented great cards.
Infallible.
Our arguments are just top notch. Let's move on to one of my favorite segments, which I call Card of the Day, where my guest, Eddie, is going to bring up a card for whatever reason he wants to. He either likes it, doesn't like it, likes the art. He hits Scryfall Random Generator. What card are we discussing today?
I hit Scryfall Random, and somehow the card it landed on was Wayfarer's Bauble.
I bet you're lying.
You'll never know.
Okay, for those of you who do not know, what does Wayfarer's Bauble do? What is it?
I think I can't even say. This is your job. Okay. What is Wayfarer's Bauble?
Wayfarer's Bauble is an artifact that costs 1. You pay 2 and tap and sacrifice it. You get a basic land into play tapped, and then you shuffle your library.
Exactly. So Wayfarer's Bauble, I think, has become synonymous with this channel.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Mitch, I had one question for you. Wayfarer's Bauble was 20 cents.
It was 12 cents when I started.
For years. You can go to mtggoldfish.com, plug in Wayfarer's Bauble. It'll show you a graph of the price. And then all of a sudden, April last year, it went up to nearly $2.
Yeah, I'm not happy about that. I want to use it as many decks as I can, and so yeah, it is unfortunate that the price of that has gone up. Wizards has not reprinted it as of recently. I think the last reprint was like Commander Anthology.
Yeah,
2,
that doesn't really.
Which was, that's not a big reprint set.
No.
So please, Wizards, reprint it.
Reprint the ramp.
Reprint the ramp.
How expensive do you think it would have to be before you wouldn't include it? Or is that like, I'm going to include this card?
Before I upped the budget from 25 to 50, there were a couple decks in between that were not including it. When it was just over, I think, $120 or 30, something like that. So I think if it got up to like $2 or $3, I wouldn't be able to include it. So
there's your tough reason. Just talk to Wizards, make them reprint the ramp.
Reprint it. Everyone, so yeah, instead of spamming the rules committee with a bunch of mean things, which you should never do,
right? You
should be spamming Wizards with reprint Wayfarer's Bauble. So,
all right,
get on that.
Get on it.
All right, so now it's your turn. Let's leave it up to you. If you had to unban one card, you are forced to. You're forced to unban one card. What would it be and why? Again, sound logic, please. And remember to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. It really does help the channel. And the podcast is brand new, so if you could subscribe and review, I would really appreciate it. Every little bit helps. And again, make sure you follow us on social media at EDH Quarters on Twitter and at The Commander's Quarters on Facebook and Instagram for some sneak peeks. And again, if you're buying decks or individual cards, make sure you're using our affiliate link, bit.ly/Commander's Quarters. Again, every little bit helps, and if you're already buying the cards, why not help support the channel? Our playmats and merchandise can be found on thecommandersquarters.com, so go ahead and check that out. And again, the Kickstarter is going to be well underway, so go ahead and check that out if you want to see that custom art limited edition playmat. And finally, again, a big thank you to my patrons. I would not be anywhere near here today if it wasn't for you. If you want to help support the channel, go ahead and check out patreon.com/commandersquarters to see all the different tiers and rewards. Okay, and one last thing before we head out. Eddie, do you want to tell everyone what our group is kind of doing right now? I know other groups do this as well, so if you haven't heard of it, it's a lot of fun.
It is. It's super great time. So we did this the last couple of years. I've done this with a couple EDH playgroups that I've been in, and it's basically EDH Secret Santa.
Mm-hmm.
So you can set a budget. We chose $30.
Yep.
It's a reasonable amount
including
to just
shipping, commander, lands, basic lands.
You know, we didn't set out the fine print that far.
You need the fine print.
We do need the fine print. It doesn't include basics. We go by, I think, MTG Goldfish pricing, just so we're all on the same page. And basically, you try to do Mitch's job. You build a budget deck, and you eventually meet up. You maybe, however you do that, and you exchange decks. You can explain as much or as little about the decks as you want to, and then just play. I think it's been kind of amazing to see how good of a play experience, like just setting these criteria and how creative people can be on that budget.
Kind of forces people who might not build budget decks to kind of look deeper to more cards and stuff like that, and maybe explore some things that they might be able to use for their actual other decks.
Right. Yeah. And it kind of really cements your deck building strategy. Like, you still want the card draw and you still want the ramp, but how do I do that on the budget?
Yeah.
It's a super fun time. I highly encourage, especially given the season, that other playgroups give it a shot. It's a
fun thing to do for the holidays.
Fun thing to do for the holidays.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I think that's all we've got today. So, all we've got today. I can't talk. Oh, been a long episode.
It has.
All right, I think that's all we've got for today. So, thanks again for joining me, Eddie.
Absolutely. Good to be here.
And thanks, everyone. Have a good one.